writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack. In this episode of Right Pack Radio, we are going to ask the question, why are we all obsessed with superheroes? Stay tuned. Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host and producer, David Allen Lucas, author of Crazy Things, currently working on a hard-boiled mystery. For some reason, I'm tripping on my tongue and trying to get that out as quick as I can and yet still be quality. Also, I do voice acting and I also teach martial arts. And with me today is returning from her trip overseas, which, by the way, I am extremely jealous because she didn't take me with her, is our Madame of Murder. She's returned from Portugal, and they didn't have any deaths, in my knowledge.
No, plenty of rain, though.
Yeah.
I'm Fedora Amos. I write Victorian whodunits like Jack the Ripper in St. Louis and Mayhem at Buffalo Bill's Wild West. And right now in line editing at 5-Star is my upcoming mystery, which will come out sometime this year or next or in the next decade. And it is called Have Your Ticket Punched by Frank James.
I'm sorry to laugh, but yeah, we know how traditional publishing can be and how long it's going to take.
It can.
And also with us is our artist Mysteriosus. I just invented that.
Mysteriosus. That's my superhero name.
That's perfect for today.
My name is Jennifer Stolzer. I'm a children's book author and illustrator, and topically, I'm currently working on a superhero comic with Van Allen Plexico. So that'll be coming out soon sometime, because I'm currently working on it now. So.
And Van Allen Plexico writes...
He writes superhero novels.
Yes.
The Sentinel series.
It's very topical for today. Go check out his books.
Yeah, go check his books out. They're very, very superhero themed. Like, you know that superhero tone, even though they are novels that are printed word novels, they still very much have that superhero feeling, and they're all illustrated, so that's cool.
Yes. And also with us is the Sky Admiral Pirate of Steampunk.
Yes, thank you.
I keep adding different titles to you, so
I'll take it.
I thought you were a Commodore.
It fluctuates.
I think I made him
I get in
an
trouble a lot, and
Yeah.
I get demoted, apparently. So it's all good. But then I
You're
get
the
promoted
queen.
again.
Wait a minute, you're the James Kirk of Steampunk.
Exactly. I just keep my own ship, that's all.
That's it.
Yes, I am Brad R. Cook, and at the moment I am writing all things steampunk, so do check that out. You can find Tears of the Gear Blade, or Tears?
Tears.
Wow.
Here's
Okay,
Wait,
really.
that's the
You have a new title.
I was gonna
coming
say
out.
that's the sequel. No, Tales of the Gear Blade. Change a couple of letters around there. Is out now. You can read the first episode for free. The second episode is out there in the world, and the third episode is coming soon. And then definitely check out the Iron Chronicles, because that is a trilogy that is complete and a lot of fun to read. Find it all at bradcook.com.
Excellent. And joining us also, coming to us via the internet, is the one and only also author of stuff that deals with superheroes and fellow voice actor.
Yes. My name is George Sroy. I'm the proud president of the Missouri Writers Guild. Looking forward to seeing all of you at the Missouri Writers Guild Conference at the Hilton Garden Inn in Columbia, Missouri on Saturday, May 19th. It's a one-day conference, but it's going to be a blast. We got a whole lot that's in store for you. You can get your tickets now by going to MissouriWritersGuild.org. I am also an author of science fiction for the young adult reader, and as Dave mentioned, my novel Excelsior is currently available on Amazon as both ebook and paperback and audiobook. And its sequel, Ever Upward Part 2 in the Excelsior Journey, is in its final edits and getting ready for a spring 2018 launch. Woohoo! And the 5-part serial from Parts Unknown is also available on Amazon in both ebook and paperback.
Excellent. And also with us today, before I get slapped, because I just jumped over her and yeah. Hi.
Hi. I'm Melanie Lucas, sitting right next to Yes.
Not Melanie Kalani today?
Yes.
She's rubbing it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I returning from my I was missing last week and apparently I was forgotten this week.
I'm gonna pay for that.
Yeah. Yes, I'm very slowly working on my fantasy novel, and this last week I haven't gotten much writing done, but I did get something for the raffle for the St. Louis Writers Guild conference coming up June.
15th, 16th, and 17th in St. Louis, Gateway Con.
Yeah.
It's a writers conference, it's a writers retreat, and it's a book fair. For more information, and by the way, I am going to announce right now we have got a fantastic cast of people coming, including one who makes me totally geek out, is because she is known for having been one of the staff writers for Stargate SG-1, and that is Heather Ash coming to talk about screenwriting.
Yay.
And this is being put on by St. Louis Writers Guild, St. Louis Publishers Association, the St. Louis chapter of Sisters in Crime, the St. Louis Press Club, Saturday Writers, Missouri Romance Writers Missouri Romance Writers of America. I am so sorry, Moira. And as well as the Midwest Mystery Writers of America. Come check it out. We will have agents and publishers and speakers galore. Lots happening. But today we're going to talk about superheroes. Okay, in a few weeks, if not less, Avengers Infinity War is coming out. The MCU has produced a pretty well done, I think, in my opinion, for whatever that's worth, a very well put together cinematic universe that's crossed between television, Netflix, which I'm going to throw under TV, as well as, obviously, on the big screen. DC has been doing it as well. I'm not going to attempting. They're not quite as good as MCU, in my opinion. But, Anthony, in my opinion...
Jumping up real quick for the cartoon universe of the...
That's a whole different story.
Exactly, DCU.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not talking about
Shout
cartoon.
out.
I'm talking about the live aspect.
Bruce Tim forever.
We'll go into more detail later,
Right.
I'm sure. There's
Oh, yeah.
passions flowing.
We'll get started here. I'm being like the mythical character
turning
who's got his
red.
finger in the dam to keep the water back. But we've got so many superhero stories going on right now in front of us.
Such a good time to be alive.
So,
It is.
and you see Comic Cons or anything like that is a Comic Con like conference just starting to overflow with people.
I believe you mean Geek Mecca, yes?
Oh, yes, totally. So, my question to everybody here, and feel free to jump off of it, is why are we so obsessed with superheroes? Is it a psychological issue? Is it a society issue? Someone has once said, I knew that the hands will start to go up. Or is it, as someone has once said, superhero stories is nothing more than the redo of mythology, or its own form of mythology. I'm going to start off with George, then I'm going to go to Jen, Brad, and then Fedora.
When I think of superhero stories, superhero characters, and everything, I think of two words: wish fulfillment. Everyone always wants to be that larger-than-life type of character, and the comic book itself allows the reader to really kind of get into the character's head, allows them to get into the character's world, and allows them to fight the character's battles. And it's no shock that some of the most successful comic book characters have that element of wish fulfillment, because the reader and the fan can identify with that particular person. Case in point, Peter Parker. The fact that he is a teenager who was put into the situation where he has all these great superpowers, the fact that he originally tried to use those superpowers for his own personal benefit instead of trying to fight crime, and being put into a situation where his guilt is kind of keeping him going as an actual hero. and also the fact that he has a mask that is completely covering his face. So he can be anyone under that mask. That's the beauty of that character, which is also why like so many characters wearing masks are so popular, because for the same reason, they can be anyone behind them.
Brad, you're doing dovetail, so I'm going. Are you? You still
Oh no, I'm
okay.
still. Yeah.
In that case, it was
My
Jen.
hand's just gotten lazier and lazier.
Okay,
that's all.
so Jen, your turn.
The question is, why do we as consumers love superheroes?
Right.
But you also said, why does the world in general love superheroes?
Yeah. Why is the world upset? Why are we all upset?
Currently, the world is obsessed with superheroes because they are the popular money-making thing.
Okay, but why?
It is because I'm gonna say Iron Man. And Iron Man started all of this,
Yeah.
and this will bring us back on topic after my cynical interlude. Iron Man started all of this because Iron Man took a moment to tell the story of a person who was very flawed, and who was Robert Downey Jr. played him perfectly. I think that RDJ was born to be Tony Stark, and everything that he's done in his life led to that moment, and he loves it. So, and you could tell, but that movie took the concept of superheroes, and instead of it being something that was geeky, it became like a movie that everyone went to go see. And this is at the end of, Batman, the Batman Nolan arc.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Those three movies. It's Batman Begins, I think, I don't know if The Dark Knight was out yet by Iron Man.
The Dark Knight came out the same year as Iron Man.
Well, then that even more so.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should start with Batman Begins, but Batman never really goes away. Batman is, he's blessed, I think, with...
Ultimate coolness.
Yeah, with the Tim Burton legacy of he never really was that bad. Even when he got really bad, like, Mr. Freeze as Arnold Schwarzenegger bad, he still had that grace in the popular culture that Batman never really went away. Iron Man was something that a lot of consumers didn't really know. And then they got to be reintroduced to the idea of there's something wrong with the world. And Tony Stark's not an average human. He's super rich and powerful, but he's dealing with human problems of guilt and addiction and all these things, and we got to then do that self-insert wish fulfillment of, we can put on a super suit and we can go take care of our problems with explosions. And it was a different tone, and everyone has since chased that. That's why the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done so well.
Just a real quick plug there, and I'm probably going to get jumped here on the internet. I'm not a fan of Tim Burton. There's a few movies of his I've liked. However, I will always owe him a debt of gratitude because he took us with the Batman stuff out of the 1960s campy version of Batman and made it possible for Christopher Nolan to tell a story that put Batman in a reasonable facsimile of a real world, which also then goes jumping out of DC over to MCU, allowed for Iron Man to actually be put into a real world scenario as well. My opinion, take it for what it was. Please don't send me hate mail. Go ahead, I believe Brad. Was it Brad next? Okay. Whoever.
Okay.
Which one?
Well, I was going to take it even further back than that. So if you go back to the, kind of beginning days of comics, you're really looking at like the 30s and the 40s for the emergence of Superman and Batman and the key characters that we know, and then you'll grow through that in the 50s to the, more and more. But anyway, point being, most of the time superheroes tend to come out when the world is in strife or having some issues or something like that, because somebody comes in and saves the day and all that kind of good feelings that are in most superhero stories tend to resonate really well when the world is not doing well. One could argue that in the post 9/11 world, the idea of a superhero kind of rising up and doing a bunch of cool things was really appealing. So because of that, I think the world goes into strife every so often. And superheroes tend to kind of come and go with that. And I would probably argue that if you went back further, you could take your tales of the Three Musketeers or your Arthurian tales or something like that and find that they hit in the times of strife as well. But the point being that comics, kind of do reflect the societies around them. Hence, the X-Men really tend to reflect that 60s society, whereas Superman, or Captain America especially, tends to reflect that more 40s society. So, we are the worlds in which we were born, I guess.
And
Reflect.
Did you want to say something about that?
Jen, you wanted to
No,
come?
I was just hoping you were.
No, I'm not. Brad says he's taking it back into the dark ages. Well, I don't think so, Brad. 60 years, 70 years.
I
Let's
mentioned
go back
comics.
2,000 years.
Yeah, I meant of the comics, not of stories in general.
Okay.
We had superheroes from the very earliest kinds of written, or I suppose oral also, talk, because that was what they sang the virtues of. We have Homer's Odyssey. Ulysses is a superhero, and he's one of my favorites for sure, because he's not a guy that just goes out and beats people up and the like. He uses his brain. He outwits people.
He is
And
the Tony
that's why
Stark.
Yeah.
he is a wonderful superhero. But as to what makes superheroes important throughout all of history is because I think that they reach some very basic part of the human psyche. They give us hope. They give us the hope that we too could find some kind of special power that would serve us well in a difficult event. Or failing that some superhuman power from somebody else could come in and save us when we were in dire need. So it is hope at the very center of a human's reason to live that brings us superhero hope and creates them from people like us who are superhero writers.
And with that said, let me jump right into the writing part. How do you write a good superhero novel? How do you write a good superhero story? Or how do you write a bad one? You can go from the other way.
Let's start with the bad one.
Well, that's fine. I'm good with that because as we were talking about, I kind of mentioned taking Batman away from the campy to a more realistic aspect. I should have said also I owe a debt of gratitude to the people who did the TV version of The Incredible Hulk. It also had that more realistic, and yes, people are not going to suddenly turn green and beat up other people throwing them across the room. But you also had the Bionic Man, Bionic Woman coming out of that time period as well. And then you had the more campy, though I absolutely loved it, Wonder Woman at the time. But if you look at some of the superhero stories, or superhero movies, I'll go with, before the Christopher Nolan, or before even the Tim Burton, you've got some real stinkers out there. So, how do you write a bad one?
Fantastic Four, the 90s version. Looking
All
at you.
of them.
Oh, God.
All the Fantastic Four.
So,
Superman
how do you write a good novel, or how do you write a good superhero novel, or conversely a bad one? Brad, you're jumping at the bit, so go for it.
I'm going to start with the good. Sorry, guys.
That's fine.
And I would
Do
say,
you have a positive outlook?
yeah. Well, I think we've seen it now. We've seen the bad of the late 80s and early 90s, and then we saw the mediocre, and now we have the pretty good, and now we have the awesome. So here we are at like the pinnacle of the superhero movie, and I think it's best if your story is not necessarily just about X superhero. We've all seen the Spider-Man tale 1,000 times. They just keep redoing it, but if you put a little bit more meat into it, you get the Winter Soldier, which actually isn't really a superhero movie, though people, and I, my one, would put it up as one of the best, simply because it's actually like French Connection, or one of those like classic spy
It's a
thrillers.
conspiracy movie.
Yeah, it almost has nothing to do with superheroes, and the superhero then falls into the setting and the theme as opposed to the thing that everything is riding on in this movie. I.e. Superman 4, as George pointed out in a second.
Everyone loves a glorious train ride.
Yes, go for it.
I'm gonna go back to my favorite topic of all. It all has to do with character and writing good character. And when you have a character with superhuman abilities or access to things that normal people do not have access to. That gives us new avenues to explore decision making and conflict. And I think how you make a good superhero movie versus a bad one is you understand that it's not about the superpowers, it's about the person with the superpowers. And when you tell a story about that person and how they deal with what they're facing with those abilities, then you've told a good story.
Chris Evans.
Chris
Go ahead.
Evans is a god.
Yeah.
George?
I actually want to go back to what I just mentioned before, Superman 4, because it not only represents the very worst, like practically like bottom of the barrel when it comes to comic book films, but it also could have been something different.
George?
And a big reason why it could have been something different is because when Christopher Reeve first came up with that initial storyline, because Canon Films, God rest their soul, consulted Chris and everything, and were able to entice him to come in by giving him a story credit, by saying, like, what do you want to do? And at that point, he was very adamant about nuclear weapons. And so he reached out to Tom Mankiewicz, who was the creative consultant for Superman 1 and 2, and asked him to write it. And Tom said two things. He said, no, I'm not going to do that, and you shouldn't either. When you put Superman into a situation where he is all of a sudden wiping out one of the biggest problems that the world is still facing, then you have a serious problem connecting with the audience with that, because that's all. It really kind of it falls in line with all of the different uses of superheroes from the 1940s during World War II. DC was very careful not to put Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman or anything into war with the soldiers, because they didn't want to denigrate what the soldiers were doing. And so what they did was they just put them on the covers. And then they had their own, separate storyline that was going on. So that is a big downfall when you can go ahead and just say, like, well, Superman's going to come over, he's going to throw all the nukes in a big net, and he's going to throw them into the sun. It's like, no, it's not how it works. And that was a big, big reason of why that movie failed so miserably, was because they basically kind of took the character for granted.
George, you kind of got ahead of yourself. For our listeners that were born after 1990, would you just give a little synopsis of the plot of Superman 4?
He puts a bunch of nuclear weapons
kind of,
in a
yes.
net and throws
Yeah,
them
and
into the
starts
sun.
with the sun. I was wondering why we didn't do that for the Ash problem
Basically,
too.
what this quote unquote movie is all about was there was the big nuclear summit that was happening amongst all the leaders of the world. It failed, and so America said that they can only strive to be second to none in the nuclear arms race. So this kid named Jeremy writes the Daily Planet a letter saying that Superman can go ahead and take care of everything. Superman refuses on the very grounds of what we were talking about before, because he had taken an oath not to interfere in Earth's problems. But then he goes ahead and just does a 180 and says that he's going to do it. He basically gets everyone involved to go ahead and launch their nukes so that he can put him in a big chain net waiting for him above the Earth, which apparently like regular people can breathe in as well. You'll know when you see it.
Yes.
Tosses it into the sun. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor winds up escaping from Chain Gang with the help of his obnoxious nephew Lenny, played by 2.5 Men's John Cryer, and they decide to use Superman's idea of getting rid of all the nukes to their advantage by taking a piece of hair that Superman donated to the museum that was holding 1,000-pound weight, which bounced when it dropped, and use that to manipulate Superman's DNA into creating a brand new character who looks absolutely nothing like Superman,
And had a
called
mullet.
Nuclear Man,
A golden mullet.
who was played by former Chippendales dancer Mark Pillow, and using the voice of Gene Hackman. I really wish I could be a fly on the wall and see Gene Hackman in the sound booth recording this terrible dialogue that he has. So Nuclear Man and Superman basically go around the world just basically like trying to one-up each other, and Nuclear Man destroys the Great Wall of China, Superman looks at it, and all of a sudden it's reformed. And a whole lot of crazy nuttiness goes along. And keep in mind, this was all done with a $19 million budget because Canon decided that they wanted to utilize the rest of their budget to go to other movies, which also tanked. And Superman 4 could not even recoup its $19 million budget at the box office. So, there. I probably saved you an hour and a half. But but by all means, if you are a fan of Trainwreck Theater, by all means take a look at it. And if you do it, listen to the commentary track from co-writer Mark Rosenthal because he goes into a lot more detail than I ever could.
Jen, and then I'm going over to Fedora.
To get us back to previous point that superheroes shouldn't be participating in real world conflicts, my counterpoint is Captain America. Whose first edition on the cover is him punching Hitler.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
When he was created specifically for the purpose of fighting in that war, because he was created and then distributed to soldiers on the front lines in their care packages as entertainment. And we're really all very impressed that he evolved beyond that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
He evolved in some very interesting ways. For a while, he was helping inner city kids in Harlem with the Falcon.
Yeah.
That was interesting. Because he looked really out of place there. But
And then when he ditches the suit, Nomad. Oh, the
Yeah.
Nomad image. Those are so. Oh, yeah.
Listeners, open up a side browser and Google Captain America dressed as Nomad, and then have a good solid laugh for a while, and come
Just
back.
imagine it's Chris Evans.
I really hope that's what happens in Infinity War too.
Oh, that'd be so.
But anyway, I don't know if it's just the introduction of superheroes into stuff like World War II that is the no-go. I think it has a lot to do with the synopsis that you pulled off for Superman 4, that it was too easy.
Right.
It was too
Exactly.
easy to go fishing and just gather all of the nuclear missiles in a net above the Earth and throw them into the sun. And then when the audience stepped out of the theater, they're like, but wait, there's still nuclear warheads pointed at us as we speak. And it just comes off as very insensitive and hollow. So I think that you can include your superheroes in real world issues, I suppose, but you have to be thoughtful of the fact that we all live here still.
Fedora, and then I've got something to say.
One of the very key reasons why we like superhero books and films is quite simply that they are utterly unrealistic. They are pure escapism.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so we can ditch all our own personal problems and not have to worry about them for 2 hours or a week or however long it takes us to read the book or watch the film. And we are, in that particular state of mind, willing to suspend our disbelief to the rafters. We will believe anything for the length of time it takes for us to read the book or see the movie. So pure escapism at its height, with lots of action and adventure, that's a reason why we like it, why it's compelling.
And there is a limit to that, just like there's a limit to any escapist media, any suspension of disbelief. Superman with the nuclear missiles is just going a step too far into that world.
Mm-hmm.
You have to keep it within the realm of us going, oh yeah, I can buy that. I can buy a man can fly. I will believe a man can fly. I will believe that. I will not believe that nuclear man exists.
One thing I'm going to
What
say.
about a giant laser beam that warms all of Gotham?
What about him flying so fast backwards that he reverses time?
One of the things in which my personal preference with some of the more modern superheroes that came out more in the comic books before it hit the movies and the TV is, I'm going to borrow the trope of the what the fuck hero.
Hey.
We're still PG-13. I can use that. I can use that
That's
word.
your only one you get.
But that is, and I'm breaking this trope into two ways. One is somebody outside of the superhero is asking them, "What the hell?"
There you go.
Thank you. What
If
the
you
hell?
do two, it's an R.
Why are you doing this? Either, if you in the Christopher Nolan version, you've got Alfred asking Bruce Wayne, "You're killing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Stop. Why are you so obsessed? You need to stop." Now I'm paraphrasing a lot of that. You get some of that in the whole entire Marvel Cinematic Universe that's coming up quite a few times, especially with the question of superpowers after the Sokovia Accords. That aspect of it. So I'm going to throw that out there. Daredevil happens. Luke Cage. Luke Cage is more of a why do I want to? And he's like, okay, I need to. And Jessica Jones, bless her heart. Yeah, she's got the constant drunk version of the WTH going on.
She's dealing with a lot.
Right, and it can be the internal version or it can be the external version where somebody's saying to them, "Why are you doing this? You just did something great and heroic." Or you see the people out there going, "Yeah, that hero's a complete menace to the world because they're destroying the world here. We're not safe. It's their fault that we're not safe." Yeah, Superman. And I'm going to finish it off with a meme I saw again recently that it has a picture of, first off, of Godzilla saying, "What's more dangerous than Godzilla trying to destroy the world?" Answer, Superman trying to save it. Mm-hmm. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Brad.
All of these are awesome superheroes, but I have to throw it out too. One of the things that I love about superheroes, and I know that is a huge factor of superheroes, is, and Fedora brought it up, is wish fulfillment, but also the notion that I can become more than I am. Mm-hmm. If you look at Zorro, if you look at the Phantom, if you look at Batman, if you look at all of these types, all of them get the notion that I can be better than I am. Now they do it through different ways. And then you have the notion of like Green Lantern who finds a ring, or Shazam who learns a magical word, and Doctor Strange who gets the mystical teachings, and you have all these different characters who were normal people mm-hmm. and were transformed or became or in some way now become greater versions of themselves and can go out and fight crime and fight whatever. And that's a really appealing story for a lot of people, and especially young people who might feel trapped in who they are and want to become somebody else, and that transformation that we all go through, and which is why I think that a lot of these stories do so well. But that notion, and it's very different than the Supermans of the the great angelic creatures of mm-hmm. Who were born with their powers and have always lived the kick butt life and all that kind of stuff. You look at Green Arrow and you look at a lot of the kind of cartoons we had, the myths we had, because a lot of these are based also on Greek myths,
right? And
you'll see it back in there as well. So it's something that I find very appealing. I know it's something that's out there. I want to bring it up.
George,
just a quick thing with the exception of a few characters, it seems like the DC universe is more based in myth, while the Marvel universe is based on real people being put into extraordinary situations. It seems like every one of the the Marvel heroes, with the exception of a few, like I said, like there's always for every Batman over in the DC universe, there's Thor in the Marvel universe. So it's like there's always that sort of thing. But that was one of the things that always kind of appealed to me about differentiating the two different universes. That one of them deals with like myths and legendary figures, people that are born with their abilities, or they come from otherworldly type of lands or underneath the water. And then you have, like in Marvel Universe, where everyone is getting hit by some sort of cosmic ray or a gamma ray or a radioactive spider or, like something to alter their DNA to make them what they are. So that's one of the things that I always found as an interesting way to kind of differentiate the two.
I was going to say, between the two, DC does rely a lot more, I think, in my opinion, on different forms of mythology. Doesn't have to be the Greco-Roman, but there are other myths out there that they've hit on. Whereas Marvel, I will say, it also is hidden on the mythology. So I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, George. But the difference, in my opinion, for what it is, DC puts it in a fictional universe. There's no real Gotham City. There's no real metropolis, etc. There's no central city. But Marvel puts it in our universe, or a version of our universe.
Right.
And they give it a little more dirt, a little more grit to the characters. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Jen.
I'm probably horribly misquoting this, but internet personality, codename Linkara, who I watch. He's a member of the Channel Awesome family, but he's also very knowledgeable, and he's taught me mostly everything I know about comic lore, because I really like watching him, and he talks about comics all the time. But he said something along the lines of, the Marvel Universe is, we can be heroes despite our flaws, and the DC Universe is, these are who we aspire to be.
I'll go with that.
So it's like the different veins of versions of heroes, until DC got confused about why people liked them, and noticed that Marvel was selling more, and thought that it was just selling more because it was darker. But it was darker because it was dealing with, we all have human flaws, but we can also be heroes despite that, and not understanding that it's because, Tony Stark is an alcoholic and rose above that we like reading about him. So therefore we should make everyone in the DC universe an alcoholic or a drug addict of some kind so that they can do the exact same story. It's like, that's not quite what we're looking for. DC was trying to do the, Superman is a beacon of light. And there's been a lot of a lot of griping with Zack Snyderverse about what he did to Superman to give him that deep, gritty, Batman-esque dark side. And that's, a lot of people were upset about that because that was not the Superman that they knew, because the Superman that they knew was the one they wanted to be as a kid. That's a little bit of a supposition on my part, but I felt like that was a relevant note to what we're talking about between DC and Marvel, and also taking a look at what it means to be a superhero and what are superheroes to us.
Fedora, I know you're waiting. Brad, is yours a dovetail or is yours
Yeah, just real quick.
Okay.
I would also throw out that in order to understand this all, you really need to go read about the last, the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the comic wars, and you'll really start to understand why they're all the same, because they're all competing with each other.
Fedora.
Directly.
I think that if you're going to be a consumer of superhero stories and films, you have to kick back and not worry about the directness of the storyline. Take, for example, Black Panther, which is endlessly entertaining.
Yes.
It is visually just stunning. It is gorgeous film. But the storyline seemed to me to have very serious flaws if you actually try to parse it.
That's because they were doing 3 amazing comic books in one movie. And if you read those 3 individual comic books, those stories are so good. The Killmonger story is so good. The Man-Ape story is so good. And I'm sorry for using that term, but that's what it was in the comics. And then the other one
Killmonger's
that
not
they
very
brought in,
sensitive either.
yeah, and then the other one is that they bring in, there's a couple that they've kind of dashed in there, but especially the Killmonger story is so good.
Then they shortchanged it. They should have made
Yes.
3 pictures.
They should.
They should have,
They should.
but we're all very happy we got one out there.
Yes.
Which is why now we're all like, who's the next bad guy gonna be?
And speaking of the next bad guy, Jen, you had something you wanted to talk about Infinity War, or do you want to leave that alone?
No, we won't bother with that.
Okay.
We'll talk about supervillains in a future episode and motivation for what makes people go evil.
Yes.
How about let's talk about motivation for what makes people want to be heroic? What
There
are
we go.
some great superhero motivations.
Your parents have to die.
Your parents do
That's
not have
pretty
to
much,
die.
I think, what has to
Don't
happen.
have to die all the time, but
Iron
there's
Man,
don't
Batman, the
they?
Phantom, Shadow was
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Only orphans need a play.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Superman
apparently,
is
if you come from a
technically-
loving family, you're not going to be a superhero.
No, Superman.
Superman is a double orphan. He lost both of his birth
Yeah,
parents.
no, but he
No,
does
no.
come from really nice people in Kansas. I
No,
mean,
Yeah.
Ma and Pa Kent are still alive
Yeah.
in the comic universe.
Yeah.
It depends on which comic universe you're talking about.
but there's generally,
Yeah,
generally
there
you're
is.
always going to have a mom and pa Kent because you can always go back to the farm and hang out. And anyone he finds in the galaxy, he can take them to the farm and
And
they
he
will
does.
instantly adjust.
They're always
So
my
I can-
favorite
yeah,
character.
yes.
Always my favorite part of any story is when they go back to Kansas and have a
And
dose of that
Mixed
good,
Plexelic, yeah.
simple life.
When Mixed Plexelic goes to the farm and screws with everybody, turns mom and pa Kent into like chickens and stuff. It's hilarious.
Which, by the way, which is one of the reasons I love Smallville as a series because it really updated that whole entire out in Kansas. George.
I'm going to throw out an interesting example of something that deviates from the norm when it comes to characters that want to be heroes. A big one was Thor. Both in the comics and in the original movie, Thor had all of his abilities. He had like his birthright. He had Mjolnir. He had like everything going for him. And because he was a selfish son of a bitch, that there's my own little contribution to the PG-13 rating here.
There you go.
Like comic book movies are all PG-13 anyway, with the exception of a few. So like why not just toe that line? But he was somebody who was selfish. He was petulant. He was, as Odin himself said, "You are a vain, greedy, cruel boy." And to which Thor responded, "And you are an old man and a fool." Now, you don't really say that to someone who can go ahead and take away your powers and banish you to Earth. But that's exactly what he did. So he had to go on his own journey to figure out what it was to be a rightful user of those powers. And it was because of that, when he was able to finally realize that, that's when his story as a hero began. But it was not right away when he had those abilities, because like that's one of the great things about mainly like about the stories that we see in all of these different superhero films and comic books and everything. It's once you have those powers, what are you going to do with them? Because it's not always going to be, oh, I'm just going to be a hero. Whereas and that's the same thing as we'll discuss later on. Oh, this happened to me, I'm going to be a villain. It's not always that cut and dry.
Brett.
I'd also throw out that Odin doing that opens the door for Beta Ray Bill to be able to use the powers of Thor later on. But no, also that whole storyline you just quoted is directly from mythology, Norse mythology. The Thor losing it and the hammer being sent down, and only when he reclaims his hammer does he get back his powers. So they actually Kenneth Branagh totally ripped from Norse mythology with that one, and rightly so too. But what I was going to bring up is that one of the things, and goes to Jen, what does it take? The other one is family lineage, and one of the things I love about certain superheroes is that lineage line thing. Phantom does it beautifully. Black Panther does it amazingly. It's another reason why I love Black Panther. The notion that it's handed down through a family line, which then gives you that like immortal character, which is what the Phantom was doing. It was creating that sense that the Phantom was a ghost and that he was immortal. It wasn't that he was immortal, it was just that the son would always pick up where the father had died. So that can be a really great way of incorporating it. You can get that generational, that really long run. Zorro's done the same way, but it's not necessarily handed down father to son. It's handed down, master to pupil. It can be father-son too. So there's all of those.
Lone Ranger as well. Lone Ranger to the I just lost the Hornet, Green Hornet.
No, yeah.
That was Uncle's.
Yeah, but you can have this kind of lineage thing. So lineage is another great way of kind of incorporating some superhero lore. And now actually we have Batman. Batman's being passed down, the mantle of the Bat, depending upon which way you go, either to Damian Wayne, to Terry McGinnis, depending upon which incarnation you prefer.
Go ahead, Fedora.
Well, I want to talk about superheroes from the Bible.
Okay.
And yes, it had them.
Same.
Yeah.
And each one, of course, has its own morality tale. Take, for example, David and Goliath. Just a little guy with a slingshot who kills the big bad giant. Which is once again suggesting that you can do
Yep.
what needs to be done if you prepare yourself and if you go for it. Or the story of Samson and Delilah, which is he is a fancy fellow who could do almost anything, strong man, that is seduced by a woman, but is reclaimed eventually as his hair grows. And even though he's blind and has all kinds of
They
problems,
even bring in kryptonite. You gotta love it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So those stories are present there, and they have morality tales with them. The modern ones, I'm a little short on seeing the morality tales somewhere. Does anybody have a suggestion?
They
for
are
me?
there.
They are there?
If
The
you
most
go,
famous
yes.
is with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And that's a Spider-Man.
Yes,
It's-
that's been drilled
So,
into us.
if
many
you've
times.
seen the latest version of Jessica Jones on Netflix, they took a twist on that, and I absolutely laughed my butt off at it. With great power comes great mental illness. So,
It's also true.
yeah, which is also true.
Also, since there's also a sense of responsibility that runs throughout a lot of superheroes. I mean, I brought up Iron Man to start with. He decided to be a superhero mostly so that he could go destroy, and I'm just talking just the movie at this point. He could go destroy the weapons that his company created that then found their way into the hands of bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, it's like I was guilty for seeing what my company has caused to the world, so I'm gonna fly off and blow them up with my hand lasers.
Brett.
Yes, so to continue with the historical thing, Cuchulainn, the famous
Yes.
Celtic warrior, most famously transforms and morphs into some crazy battle god. Has a spear that turns into light and can be thrown, and famously does all these really cool things. Totally falling into the superhero category. Even some of the berserkers from real life were considered superhero because they could fight 40 men at once and all that kind of craziness. King Arthur is a great superhero. I love King Arthur as a superhero because when you break it down, he's a guy with a magic sword. Found a magic sword and transformed him into this guy who's now suddenly connected to the land. When he's feeling good, it's a sunny day and everything blossoms, and they're like the fields
Start
are
singing.
great.
Start
Yeah,
singing the song.
yeah, exactly. And on days when he's like upset and ticked off, suddenly it's rainy and all that craziness. And when you think about it, that can be really fun. Then you have Merlin, who's just as much of a superhero character as he is, and then the knights. Who, depending upon which reading you're in, some of them get mystical powers and fun stuff like that. So they run all throughout history, which is why I think whenever we're in strife as a culture, as a people, we kind of look towards these really cool stories. So yeah, I mean they're all over.
And
And
you have
it's-
certainly cognates in El Cid
Yeah, El Cid,
and
another good one.
Siegfried and
Thank you. I was
all
waiting on that
across
one.
the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not just we've hit a lot of European, but if you go across the world, you'll find these stories in almost every culture. I say almost just in case there is one I can't think of out there. Hiawatha, with a Native American or Iroquois. Let me get that correct. The Iroquois League.
I'm pretty sure everyone has
I'm-
stories.
Yes, I would totally agree. And I'm gonna throw out one of my favorites, which is Robin Hood.
Another good one.
Another good one. Depending on the version you read, he was basically a knight or of at landing, and he's like, okay, I'm back before the king, who's still kidnapped, and we have this prince who is claiming to be king and basically robbing everybody, and we've got corruption here. I'm going to stand up against him. With that, and those mythologies, which now inspire our superhero stories, also inspire nations and people in general in modern day. I picked Robin Hood on purpose. Does anybody know around the table how Robin Hood is actually connected to the United States Constitution?
Magna Carta?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why?
I was gonna say.
What happened is, after King John became, oh, here comes Richard back, and I've got to bow down again. He rises up against King Richard. He kills King Richard, or King Richard gets killed by a crossbow bolt. And the story of Robin Hood there is he also gets killed or gets injured at that final battle, and eventually dies of his wounds. Which eventually the people rise up against King John and make him sign the Magna Carta, which leads to our United States Constitution many centuries later. And with that, I think that's kind of the importance of stuff like that. Everything we've talked about is the importance of superhero stories, why we are obsessed with them. I can think of a couple of places to look for information if you're interested in writing about superheroes. One is Superhero Nation. I don't know if they're still keeping it up to date, but the website's still up there. It's nothing but articles. There's nothing there but articles on writing and writing about superheroes. Ladies and gents, do you have any suggestions? Others?
Yeah, I'd like for each of us to tell our favorite superhero of modern times.
Actually, I wanted to throw it out too.
I want to start actually because I believe that my favorite superhero has a good sense of humor and also is just a little bit modest. And I like a superhero that would be that way. So I'm picking the Chris Pratt and Zoe Saldana pair of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh,
I
yes.
like them.
Hooray!
Hey, Jen,
Me?
since you're next, yeah.
My favorite is and always will be Batman.
Batman.
I grew up with the Batman animated series.
Batman.
That is definitive Batman, and I will hear no argument.
Check it out.
I love that
Kevin
Batman.
Conroy.
I love that Batman is that he's a normal dude. He's got tons of money, but the reason he can fly around and punch people is because he does exercises in his cold cave in the basement. And
Yeah.
he's got a kick-ass butler, and I always like butler characters because of that. But also there's a strong element of family that runs through the Batman series, that he's taking on these wards, Robins, and then he runs through them, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But thankfully it's because most of them get too old or want to quit. But he has, but then he has, some have died, and we have to deal with him mourning the loss of a son, basically.
Mhm.
And all the different versions, from goofy version to the dark, growly version. Batman has always been my favorite.
Okay, George, I'm going to let you go next.
Well, I mean, the top one for me has always been Batman, but Jen really kind of hit it on the head about about everything that makes him who he is. So I'm going to go with a runner-up, and for me that would be Professor Charles Xavier.
Okay.
He's always been he is someone who consistently sees the good in humanity when every instance that's possible, the opposite just keeps on hitting him in the face, and he just keeps coming back, and he's not always, we see him, probably my favorite representation of him was in X-Men Days of Future Past in the film, where you see someone who has been broken by the circumstances of the world around him and is somehow able to get it together and be a catalyst for going, taking everything in a different direction. And he's also somebody who refuses to use his very powerful powers, you can say, who refuses to manipulate it in ways that would be harmful to other people, to take away their free will. The fact that he still allows everyone to operate as they will, that says a lot about him. I believe, it's something that I believe is something great about that character. It's something that always struck with me.
Brian.
Chuck's a good guy. Okay, so I have 4 favorite superheroes, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but they're Batman, Black Panther, Green Lantern, and Green Arrow. They all share some similarities if you go into them and stuff like that. I'm going to jump back to Batman in a second because Jen touched on him great.
Can you talk about Green Arrow? He's one of the least known. Certainly.
No, he's got a great TV show going right now.
Yeah.
So Green Arrow is a normal guy who's also super rich, who has the power of being really good at using a bow, and he can shoot all kinds of fancy arrows depending upon which incarnation. And I am not against the giant punching
bag arrow?
The boxing glove arrow.
Just
Are you behind the blonde mustache?
I was okay with the blonde mustache even. Like I wasn't even like Oliver Queen and I are totally cool. But he is he's Batman with a bow is probably the easiest way of putting it out there for people. But one of my favorite superheroes will and forever always be, despite the movies, is Green Lantern. And that's simply because I love the notion that I can have a ring that can give me the powers of almost anything, but that power is entirely limited on my own will. Mm-hmm. And that any self-doubt is going to kill exactly what I'm trying to do, the construct that I'm creating. And those kinds of notions. I love the idea that will is a power and a force in the universe, and that it's one of the strongest powers and forces in the universe. I also love the notion of being able to fly through space, and that I have a sector of the universe that I would be in control of. Have to patrol and go through, do all that kind of fun stuff. I will say that I do have favorite lanterns. Hal is not one of them, but they seem to love.
I wonder why that is.
But Jon Stewart and Kyle Reese are actually two of my favorites. Kyle mostly for his ingenuity because he was an animator, a cartoonist. So his constructs are the most creative and interesting. And then Jon just because he's awesome. But because of that, I think that there's a lot of story potential to tell in Green Lantern, and there has been. There's been a really great cartoon that came out. I've loved his appearances in the brilliant Bruce Timm Batman series, the Superman, the Adventures of Superman. He came in there. And then, in the Justice League itself, when, you had the classic Jon Stewart character. So I'd probably have to go with that. However, quick shout out, though, to Batman. It is time. We don't have too many years left, but I want Batman Beyond to become a live-action movie with Michael Keaton as, the old Bruce Wayne. It would be the best. He's grizzled. He's awesome. If you want to see what it would look like, go watch Spider-Man and just imagine that's Bruce Wayne. And it's all good. And then you can find a really cool guy to pull off Terry and wear the cool black suit and do all that kind of stuff. But it's time.
And
so that's it, yeah.
I'm going to say, just really shout out before I give to Melanie on that. DC, I know you're not listening, but I'm going to pretend you are for a second.
Didn't listen to anybody.
When Star Wars first came out, I saw it 22 times in the theater. If you created the Batman Beyond and made it a good plot, I can guarantee you I might go for 23. For you.
Powers, you could even we could even get, George Takei's voice.
Oh.
The cool guy who's like Powers' henchman from the first episode.
Yeah, okay, go for it. Melanie, your turn.
Just because no one else has mentioned him, but Luke Skywalker, Star Wars, Jedis, no one mentioned them. They're superheroes too.
They're superheroes in their own fantasy world.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah,
He
you're
exists
right.
on a different plane to me.
Yeah.
In a universe far, far away.
Well, I'm kind of surprised that Brad didn't mention Duncan MacLeod for the same reason, though.
No, same reason though. I don't consider him a superhero. It's like some sort of cool guy with sword thing. I don't know.
Exactly.
Oh no, come on. He would count as a superhero. He just doesn't do much.
He would, simply because he goes around saving the day literally every 20 minutes. I guess it's every 50 minutes or so, because it was every hour.
Okay, I may break the thing about modern in this aspect, but I'm going to go ahead and, I'm like Brad, I've got a couple that tie. So, Batman, I will admit, right off the bat.
Okay, Batman's the winner.
Batman's the winner, but...
Batman always wins.
And I'm going to come back, I'm going to share something here about Gotham in just a second. It's just a pet play theory of mine. It's not a real theory, it's just something I play with in my head.
You got a film theory thing here.
No, it's just something I'll explain when we get to it. So I got I got Batman, which I will confess, even though I cringe at the 1960s campy version.
It has its place.
It was when I was in kindergarten, so take it for that. It was the first TV show on reruns that I actually played hooky because they moved the time slot in a break between part 1 and part 2. Okay, that confession's done. Spider-Man, definitely up there. Daredevil is one of my favorites as well.
Daredevil is awesome.
And yes, he's got a certain level of superpower, but he is very gritty, and the symbolism in
The
Daredevil.
man can see with his ears. That's a superpower.
I agree. I said he's got a superpower, but the grittiness in there is awesome to me. The final two I'm going to mention before I go to the one I break. I am starting to. I did not read the original comics, so here MCU, you've gotten me interested in these two, and DC, you've got me interested in one as well. They are Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. I'm just now getting into them beyond the MCU, and Black Lightning from DCU. I've been enjoying that, and I'm like, okay, I want to know more about this character. But my ultimate, all-time favorite superhero above everybody else is not set in modern day. Zorro. Even the bad movies versions of him, I still love them to death.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm going to end this with my little theory. It's not really a theory, it's just something I play with. If you've watched Gotham, you know that Alfred Pennyworth is being played by Sean I can't pronounce it now.
Pertwee.
Yes, thank you.
And
I like to play that in my head that Alfred Pennyworth actually is a Highlander style immortal, because if you know the actor's background or his roles he's played, he has played Julius Caesar. He has played the undersheriff of in the Ellis Peters, the Brother Cadfael, which Brother Cadfael was a monk who was a detective and took the undersheriff under his own wing, if you will, in both the books and the TV show. And so I get Sean, who was Julius Caesar. He's played other roles. He gets to learn about solving crime from Brother Cadfael, who was a homegrown criminalist of his own right. And now he's teaching Batman. Just imagine that connection. As before, it's completely, totally fake, but hey, I enjoy it. And with that, I'm going to end this episode. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to us on whatever platform you listen to us on. And check out our check out our Facebook page. Share it. And thank you for listening. Take care. Have a great week writing. The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her. Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack. In this episode of Right Pack Radio, we are going to ask the question, why are we all obsessed with superheroes? Stay tuned. Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host, Dan, producer.